Well, while George is getting ready, I'd just like to welcome you all to our watermelon harvest farm chat this morning. Thank you all for joining us. We are going to be back in the same watermelon field that we were in when the baby plants were planted. So this is pretty exciting to see how they have grown from the baby watermelon plants into full grown 12, 14-pound watermelons. And so some of you got to see the first video that we did when George was out in the field watching the little baby plants get planted. This will be really exciting. Um, but we're going to go ahead and get started. And just a couple housekeeping things. If you'd all like to please keep your mute button on so we don't get feedback into George's headset or mine. And please, if at any time you have questions, teachers, feel free to get those in the chat box and we will answer them as we go along. I'm pretty sure George will probably get those answered as he goes through the farm chat, but I'll be monitoring that to make sure that all of our questions get answered this morning. There you are.
Okay.
Everyone wave hi to George.
Hi from sunny South Florida. And for you guys, it is hot and dry. We were 97 degrees yesterday. Right now, we're probably about 85 degrees. And okay.
Well, that's a difference from what we're experiencing today. Where I'm at in Iowa, it's cloudy, there's some rain showers, and it's only in the 50s. So this is a great sight to see. We'll pretend we're right with you.
Okay, well, you are through technology here and
yes.
The power of technology. Well, again, welcome everyone to sunny South Florida. We're in the same watermelon field, as Allison said, that we planted 3 months ago back in February. So it's so much fun now to see what has happened here in the field over the last 3 months. And if any of you saw the video earlier, you remember that we don't get a lot of rain here in South Florida. And what I'm showing you is this black pipe runs underground, and it actually runs underneath all of these watermelon vines, which are so beautiful now. And of course, you see the proverbial fruits of our labor. This is what we're going to be harvesting today. And this is so much fun because we do all the work. I'm sure most of you know out there in corn and soybeans, in big farming, big ag, it takes a lot of work, a lot of equipment, and a lot of money to grow crops. But what's so much fun here is that this crop was planted by hand, and this crop's going to be harvested by hand today. And we're so fortunate that this grower has agreed to let us come in and share this with you. I've actually been working with this grower for over 10 years now and helping him grow better watermelons. And I can tell you, and this is very candid, this is the best looking watermelon field I may have ever seen in my entire life. I've never seen anything this beautiful, to have this many melons. And as you can see, as I go through here, there was a crew of workers who actually have knives who have come out by hand this morning, and they have uncovered these watermelons, and they've actually cut them off right here on the stem. You can see that it's been cut off from the plant. What's going to happen here shortly, the workers are going to come out here in the field and they're going to pick up these watermelons and load them, and then they'll be carried to a central location where they'll actually be cleaned and sized, and they'll be put into cartons, and then they'll be shipped all over the United States. But I hope a lot of them get to come to you there in central Iowa. That's my goal. But to give you an idea, we planted about 2,500 plants out here per acre. And so that is what you're now seeing has grown from those little baby plants 3 months ago. We've now got full coverage of this entire acreage of these watermelon plants. So this is a lot of fun to be here on the day that they're starting harvest. There will be about 3,000 melons per acre. So these melons, some of them are quite large. For instance, this watermelon right here will probably weigh about 20 to 22 pounds. Now that is a red seedless watermelon. All of these watermelons are of the red variety. The name of these is actually Sierra Nevada. We will actually see some other watermelons shortly, and their name is Red Amber. And all of these are the actual seedless watermelons. Now, how do you get a seedless watermelon? Well, if you remember when we planted these, when we planted the baby plants for the seedless watermelons, every third to fourth plant is actually a seeded watermelon. It's a bigger watermelon that actually has a lot of seeds in it, black seeds. And so for convenience, customers like to have the seedless watermelons that don't have any seeds. So we have two different varieties out here in the field, and I was looking to see where I might find some of the seeded melons that I could show you the difference. But again, like right here, here are the seedless watermelons. Now this field right here that we're in is about 100 acres. Now to give you an idea of how big that is, I know in corn and soybeans, that's maybe not a very large field, but this field, when we look at it, cost $12,000 an acre to plant and harvest these watermelons. That's a lot of money per acre. Comparatively, in the Midwest, we would probably be spending no more than $2,000 per acre to plant and harvest corn and soybeans. So this watermelon crop is actually 6 times more expensive to plant than the corn and soybeans. And again, we have to have all this hand labor to be able to harvest this. Likewise, it was planted by hand. We don't have a way to use machines, not yet. And I've been doing this a lot of years. I'm not sure it's on the horizon yet, of being able to mechanically plant. And I know it would be very challenging to try to mechanically harvest these melons. Maybe one day in you guys in your lifetime, but right now, excuse me, for us, it's all done by hand. And so we're going to work our way across the field, and I want to show you what's happening where the workers are getting ready to start loading these melons. Now
George,
you
while you're
ask,
walking across the field, can I interrupt you for a quick question?
sure, no, go ahead.
When you were describing, you put some of the watermelon plants were seeded watermelon plants among the unseeded watermelon plants. Is that needed? Are seeded watermelon plants needed to grow the unseeded melons, the seedless
Correct.
melons? Okay,
Correct.
why is that?
You would not have the pollen. These, I'll show you. You see the watermelon vine and the flowers. Where there's a flower, there's potential for a melon to form. In fact, here's a beautiful little site. If you can see it, see that baby watermelon underneath that flower? That actually is what turns into the melon. But that will not happen unless the flower gets pollen from the male plant. These are female plants. The seedless watermelons are females, and the male plant is the seeded watermelon. And we have to have that pollen from the seeded melon to be able to pollinate these seedless watermelons. The correlation, the analogy to corn out in Iowa is that you have to have the pollen hit the tassel. You have to have the top of the corn plant, when it tassels out, you actually have to have that pollen from the top of the plant actually hit the silks on the corn plant to be able to, the ear of corn, for it to germinate, pollinate, it has to have the pollen from the top of the corn plant. Of course, in the corn world, that's done by wind and rain. Out here in the watermelon field, we actually use bees, and bees are really important. I think you all know that, but honeybees and bumblebees are very necessary to help us pollinate these watermelons out here in the natural field.
Okay. Do you need watermelon seeds to actually grow the seedless watermelon plants? That was a question we received from one of the classes. Is how do
Yes,
seedless watermelon plants grow without a seed?
well, they actually are grown in a nursery in a controlled environment, and that's where the seed are planted in trays, and then the baby watermelons grow the plants in the nursery, in the greenhouse. And then what we did 3 months ago was come out here and actually plant them in the field. And so now here we are 3 months later, and we're harvesting these watermelons that have been grown here in this field.
Okay. Now we have a question. Do you think seedless watermelon tastes any different than seeded watermelon? Was there a taste difference?
I don't know that there's a great difference in the taste. They're both very sweet. I actually think
The
that a
convenience of
seedless,
the seed, right? Of not having to spit the seed out.
correct. That is more of a convenience factor. I personally would rather eat the heart of a seeded melon. I think it's sweeter, but then I'm trying to stay away from all the seeds. But a seedless watermelon is just so much more convenient. So you're actually getting a very sweet melon, and it actually has seeds. It's just that they're very tiny and they're white. They're not black. So in a seedless watermelon, there are still seeds. They're just almost invisible, but you could not grow the melon without a seed. That is correct.
Yeah. How do you know when the best time is to pick the watermelon?
Well, I can tell you that is a real mystery. If there's a mystery in agriculture and watermelons, I'm going to tell you that I think it's, when is a watermelon ready? I have been out here in the field for 15 years now working around watermelons, and I have only gotten 2 or 3 answers that really helped me to decide if a melon was ready or not. We're going to look at the size of the melon. That's going to be one indicator. And another indicator that I found is that they call it the yellow belly. And when a watermelon starts to develop the portion of it that is like this, that's yellow, then that's starting to tell you that melon's getting ripe. Now, I've had others tell me that when the stem starts to get loose, and you can actually see on my finger here, that's actually sap coming out of that where it was cut off from the plant, and now it's getting ready to be thrown up in the truck, harvested. The other thing is on the flower end, on this end, where there was that flower, and when this, and it's not green anymore, that's another good indicator. I've also had people hit them and thump them and say that they can tell that the sound, I'm sure they know what they're doing, but I do not know the secret to that, of how you can actually hit it and tell how firm it is. But again, I think I've given you a pretty good indication that it's a mystery as to know exactly when a watermelon's ripe, but I can tell you what the ultimate tool is. Get out a sharp knife and cut it open. And then you'll know whether one's ripe or not.
Yep.
Now we're getting here to the fun part. I think you can see there what's starting to happen. We've got the pickers are now in the field, And I think you see the school buses. And I'm going to move over to where we can actually get a better look at what's going to be going on with the actual melons coming up out of the field. Yes, those are old school buses. I know that you might find that quite interesting, that some old school bus had all the windows cut out and the seats taken out, and they use it to harvest these watermelons. And here in Florida, it's actually one of the most common methods of harvesting watermelons is old school buses. So after you guys have used those school buses for a lot of years to get to school and get home, they're now being repurposed as a way to haul watermelons.
Interesting. How many
So
days will it take to get this whole watermelon field harvested?
a crew normally can go through about 50 acres a day. So that's multiple crews. That's not just this one crew. As you see, we've got the workers here and they're going to come back toward us. So I'm not going to try to chase them down. We can continue to answer questions here and talk as we go and kind of get closer to the buses. But as you can see, there's 3 or 4 workers out actually in the watermelon vines, and they are picking up those melons that a crew just an hour ago, when I first got here to the field, the crew with the knives were going by, and just like again, this one, it's been cut off from the vine and it's here ready to be thrown up into that bus. So this is a very systematic process going on, that the first set of workers comes in and finds the melons that are ready. Remember, as I said earlier, there's another variety, and you can see how yellow the belly is on that one. That's a really good looking melon. And then these workers are actually just physically picking them up, and they're kind of using a fireman drill that they're transferring them across the beds and throwing them up into the school bus.
How did that idea come along to use a school bus to help with harvest?
Honestly, I have no idea. I'm just sure as farmers are very ingenious. We can do anything with duct tape and baling wire. We're very creative as farmers. So I just think that someone probably had an old school bus around and decided to cut the top out and take the seats out and use it. I really, it's quite interesting because certainly school buses are not 4-wheel drive like a lot of our equipment in the farm and a lot of our trucks. And again, I want to show that everyone, you can see this is beach sand. This would be a little whiter over at the beach by the Gulf of Mexico. And I'm down here in South Florida, about 20 miles inland from the Gulf of Mexico, but that's a lot different than your soil in Iowa. You've got really heavy, nice soil in Iowa and grows really good crops. But I think you can see here, you might not have ever seen a watermelon field before today, but I can tell you, this is absolutely gorgeous. This is one of the most beautiful watermelon fields I've ever seen. And what's even surprising is that this field has already been picked on Monday. And here we are on Thursday, 4 days later, and we're picking more watermelons. So this is an ongoing event. These watermelons will be harvested multiple times, hopefully 4 or 5 times over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Hey.
I know someone asked earlier what happens when a melon gets broken.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this one's been sitting out here and is already starting to deteriorate. So this one will be food for the animals, whether it's the deer or the raccoons, but that will be eaten later tonight. They like to come out at night there. more nocturnal animals. And so they'll come out tonight and they'll make a feast off of these broken watermelons. But I know there was a question about how long do these melons last? Watermelons do not have to be refrigerated. You can refrigerate them. It's certainly nice when they're ice cold, but they will last anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks after cutting. So we're able to take these watermelons and we are able to put them into boxes and cartons and put them on trucks, semi-trucks, and ship them all over the United States. And that will get to your store hopefully within a week, even up in Iowa. And then you'll be able to enjoy these watermelons once you get them home for anywhere, typically for another 2 to 3 weeks. You could actually have them at room temperature in your garage and not have to refrigerate them. And they're still going to be very delicious over the next 2 to 3 weeks after they get to your store in Iowa.
Great. Well, as you're approaching the school buses and we see the workers loading the watermelons in, how many workers are in the field currently, you think, helping with the harvest?
Right here at this, where we're standing in the field, there's about 20 workers here, about 10 per each bus. They've got the 7 or 8 crew out in the field. We've got a couple guys up in the bus that are actually catching the melons, and we of course got the school bus driver or the watermelon bus driver today. Yep. But as you can see, we're transferring these melons as they get to the ripe melons that have been turned over and the yellow belly up to the sky, and then they transfer them man to man to man to man and then throw them up in the bus. I know there was a question about how many melons can that bus hold. The bus can hold anywhere between 1,500 and 2,000 melons. That would weigh about 20,000 pounds. Sometimes they get loaded heavier and maybe even upwards of 30,000 melons.
Wow. How big are the melons that these workers are handling? Just by a guess, how many pounds do you think they are?
Those melons are anywhere from 18 to 22 pounds.
Okay.
So you can do the math, and then that means there's about 1,500 to 2,000 pounds in that bus. And then that bus will be driven about 30 minutes away to where they actually unload them by hand onto a conveyor belt. And then the melons are actually then sized and cleaned and processed and put in boxes. And then they'll be in a semi truck tonight heading to your favorite grocery store.
It's terrific. What's the name of the, so if they do come to a grocery store near us in Iowa, how would we know if that's a melon from Florida?
Well, there will be a tag on it. There has to be a tag according to the Department of Agriculture. It would have to identify the point of origin where this melon was grown. So it will have a little sticker on it and tell you the name of the company that grew it and sold it. And then it'll tell you where it was originated. And in this case, it would be Florida.
Can you share with us the name of the company that is growing the watermelons here?
Well, this is actually S as in Sam, M as in Mary, P as in Paul, SMP Watermelons.
Okay.
I've been working with them now actually since about 2010. So we're in our 14th year of working with this farm.
Terrific. So look, everybody, on their watermelons when you're picking them out with your folks at the grocery store. If you see on the label that it's from Florida and from SMP Watermelons, it was from this farm with George today or on Monday.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Let's see. So when we were walking through the field, we kind of saw some watermelon that had holes in them. Looks like that they rotted a little bit. Do you just leave those there for the animals then to eat?
That's correct. You know, we couldn't do anything with a damaged melon. In fact, I can go right over here and show you. And actually what happens is the especially the raccoons, when they get to a melon like that, they'll actually dig the meat out, and then actually it'll just be left a husk. In fact, here's a good example. This one, baby melon, you can see the hole that the raccoon dug in with his claws, and he ate the sweet melon inside, and then this outside has turned from green to dark brown as it's decomposed here in the field.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you mentioned that this field is the best looking watermelon field that you've seen in a long time. What do you think, what components helped make it thrive and make it grow so well this year?
Well, as we all know, anything in farming is dependent upon the weather. And of course, we have our blessings, and this is a blessing that everything has kind of worked for the good this year. Everything came together. We've had no devastating rains. We've had no devastating wind events, because when the baby watermelon plants are growing, they're very susceptible to the wind. And this farmer actually, we pointed it out when we were doing the original filming, but this straw is from a windbreak, and we actually grew about a 4-foot tall windbreak here between the 2 rows of melons so that we could help protect those baby plants. And so this straw now on the ground is where they came in and cut it down now that we've started harvesting, so that you could get into the field easier. But that windbreak served a very important purpose when we were growing these watermelons, to help these plants get established without getting damaged. Basically, as I showed you earlier with the sand out here, the wind can really kick up that sand, and it looks like something out of a movie from the Sahara Desert. We can have a sandstorm, and of course that sand is very damaging to the tender plants. But all of those things together, with a very good agronomy program, a very good grower who's done this for a lot of years. Chris is probably 30 plus years growing watermelons, and he's a wonderful grower. And I've helped him with my products in his field for a lot of years, and it definitely is fun to see this, because as I was saying earlier, this field, I know I can't really show you anything of a typical field right at the moment, but this field has been walked through now 2 times. And why I emphasize the significance of that is, when you walk through the field, the workers, and pick up the melons, they're actually standing on crushing the plants. But these plants do not look like they've been walked through at all. A typical watermelon field like this right now, if it had been walked through 2 times, all of the vines would be compressed down and actually like laying on the ground. And these plants are so healthy that you can see they're still putting on more flowers. And actually, here's the baby, okay? That's the baby watermelon that's going to turn into one of these big boys out here in the field that they're throwing up in those buses. So
will you allow those watermelons to continue to grow, and then will they come back and harvest them once they're fully ripe?
Correct. That's what's going on right now. See this melon right here? This melon is probably only about 5 pounds. We need that melon to be 15 to 20 pounds before we harvest it. So there's different stages of melons right here. That's maybe 12 pounds. And then here is a bigger one. That's probably more like 15 pounds. But we're getting very close. But that's why I was saying, in the field, we have multiple growth stages. The importance is that the longer we can harvest this field, the more production that this grower is going to get. Now, a typical rule of thumb in a watermelon field in Florida is that you get 1 semi, which is 45,000 pounds. You get 45,000 pounds of melons per acre. In my experience, and I talked to Chris, the owner of this farm, before we started the video, He thinks that this field has 70,000 pounds per acre. He consistently grows 55 to 60,000 pounds per acre. But that's why I'm excited to see how this works out over time. Now, I do want to show something here, because you might wonder what's going on right here? Well, this is disease, and this is something called fusarium. And fusarium is pretty bad on watermelons. And you can see we go from those beautiful, healthy vines that we've been looking at all morning, and then you go to these healthy vines. So you can see this is what a typical melon field would look like after it's been walked through 2 or 3 times. And you can see then the small melons, they're not going to make it. Those will never be harvested. They will never get big enough to be commercially harvested. So what's happening here is that this field on its second cut now is really starting to pack on the yield. And I guess for you guys up there, you would understand it as more bushels per acre. Well, this one's packing on more melons per acre and more pounds per acre, which is the same thing as the weight of, say, a bushel of corn of 56 pounds or a bushel of soybeans at 60 pounds. We're after these watermelons in thousands of pounds per acre.
Wonderful. Well, as we're hopefully we can maybe see another shot of the school bus with the melons inside before we wrap up. But I just wanted to scroll through some of these questions that we've been getting in. So you mentioned the farmer, Chris. How many watermelon fields does he have?
He has a total of 5 fields this year. They're about 100 acres each. So he has 500 acres of melons. He is one of the top 5 largest watermelon growers in the state of Florida.
Wow. And you mentioned earlier how much it cost the grower to plant these fields of watermelon. How much, or what does the profit look like after these are harvested for the farmer?
Okay, hang on, Allison. Let me just jump real quick here, and
Sure.
I'll answer that in just a second. But I just want to show the bus and the melons in the bus real quick.
Yes, please. I think we're all interested.
Okay, I know you guys, a lot of you are familiar with these steps up into the Bluebird school bus. Here we go.
Oh
This
my.
look a little different than your school bus today.
Just a little, huh?
That is really pretty to see those melons. So, okay. So what we were talking about for Farmer Chris, it's a big investment to plant this watermelon field. It would be, like we talked earlier, about $12,000 per acre to plant and harvest these melons. The profit that he actually would make after he sells the melons is about 5 cents, a nickel, 5 pennies per pound. So when we were talking about the math earlier, if Farmer Chris can get 60,000 pounds an acre, that means he can make a profit of $3,000 per acre. Each of these watermelons at about 15 to 20 pounds would generate him about 75 cents to $1 in profit. These melons in your grocery store, I suspect in Iowa, would probably be selling for about $6 per melon.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Well, I think they really enjoyed seeing the bus there. I think that was really the highlight there of the tour. That's just so interesting how they do that.
We do have big green and yellow John Deere tractors. We have them too. And actually what's happening now, the kids might enjoy this. He's backing up to hook up to a chain. The bus is stuck and they got to pull the bus out with the tractor. So we're going to pull the bus out and get it out of the sand, because this sand, like I said earlier, the school buses are not 4-wheel drive like our trucks and tractors. Like that big tractor, you know, that's a 210 horsepower John Deere tractor. and it's 4-wheel drive, so it won't have any problem pulling that school bus out. But that's what's about to happen there is the school bus got stuck in the sand.
Okay. Yeah, if we could watch this for a minute and see what transpires, that'd be neat.
Oh yeah, we'll just stay right here.
All
They're
right.
about to tighten the chain, and he's closing the school bus doors. He's got everybody in their seats. He's got all the melons in their seat and got their seat belts on. Here we go.
Good thing you got off the bus, George.
That's right. Okay, there we go. All right. Here comes the watermelon bus. So like I said, that big John Deere tractor, I know that you guys out there know exactly what those are. Y'all see those every day in Iowa. But look at that sand. That is a lot of sand. You can see, I'll try to get closer, him pulling those wheels through that sand.
That's crazy.
So John Deere tractor to the rescue.
Yes. And maybe you already answered this, George. How many watermelons can fit on each bus?
About 20 to 30,000 pounds. So actual count, there's about 1,500 to 2,000 melons, actual physical pieces on each bus when they're fully loaded.
Wow. All right. I'm just scrolling through. I can't believe how fast this went. We're almost out of time. Can you tell just by looking at a watermelon if it's seedless or has seeds?
No, not typically. The best indicator, seedless melons are more round. They would be more like maybe the size and shape of a basketball, but a seeded melon would be a lot longer, and it would actually be more oblong, if they can understand that.
Sure. Yep. Does the watermelon change at all as it travels from the field in Florida to a grocery store here in Iowa?
Not really. I mean, over time, it's actually going to get a little sweeter. It would just be the biologicals, which are everywhere, and then us too. The good biologicals are in the melon, and so they are there, and they are what built the sugar. The biologicals in the soil and in the plant and in that melon built that sugar. That plants build sugar. That's one of the things that I share with growers all over the nation, is that nature, just like this forest here, this forest grows without man touching it. And then man is growing this watermelon field. But everything works in nature, works over here in this field, and vice versa. It's no different. Plants build sugar. Man cannot build sugar. Plants build sugar, and trees build sugar. And that's the way nature is designed to work.
Mm-hmm. And well, this is a great question to end on. What is your favorite type of watermelon, George?
Actually, it's called a crunchy red, and it's a variety that Farmer Chris has grown for about almost the entire time I've known him, 15 years. But sometimes varieties that are, engineered, they reach their, maturity. And so Farmer Chris is now growing this red amber, which I think is going to be a very close cousin to the crunchy red. But the ones here in the field right now, these are Sierra Nevadas. And actually, Allison, I want to kind of make my way back over to my truck real quick. If we have a couple more minutes, I want to share something with the classrooms.
Okay.
But just give me. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if anybody needs to jump off, they can go ahead or stay on as long as you'd like.
There's a grand finale coming here.
Okay.
I think the children would like to see. So
okay.
Just give me. I had my truck over here on the side of the field, of course, to be out of the way from the workers and the buses and tractors. So
Sure.
just
Don't
another
want to get
mill
in the
in
way.
here.
So you mentioned that there's two different varieties of watermelon that are growing in this field that we're in right now, two or three.
Correct.
And how many different varieties of watermelon are there out there?
Honestly, Allison, I would have no idea. I probably know personally of 30 or 40 different varieties, but I'm
Okay,
sure, and that's just here in Florida. I'm sure you
right.
could go certainly in other states, because watermelons are grown, all over the place, and especially in the South. And what's unique right now is that these melons are being grown and ready here before Memorial Day. Now, other parts of the country that come in later, they can't plant as early as we did here in Florida, planting the 1st of February. Like you guys, have had to wait to plant your crops in Iowa here in the last month, and you're still
Yes.
planting. And for us, we were able to plant early, and then we harvest early. But what I want to show now is, of course, the fruits of our labor, guys. This is what we're after. There we go. That's what's out there in the field. We've been
That looks
growing
like
these beautiful
seedless
red watermelons.
watermelon.
And this is a seedless watermelon. As you can see, right there is a tiny little white seed. They're almost invisible, and they're very edible. They're very soft, whereas a seeded watermelon would actually be a black hard seed that's really, they won't hurt you to eat them. I know my mother said growing up that I ate so many watermelon seeds that she thought I was going to sprout them out my ears. But back in that day when I grew up, we didn't have seedless watermelons. They were all seeded. Now, I want to show you something from another farm. There is a yellow meat watermelon. Now, I've got another grower here in Florida that's growing yellow meat, and they are really pretty and they're really sweet. But that gives you a comparison between a red and a yellow watermelon.
That is beautiful. I wish there was some way we could reach through the screen and taste, because it looks
Well,
wonderful.
I wish I could send them to you guys right through the phone up to Iowa, and y'all could
Well,
enjoy these today.
Yep, we've already started enjoying some watermelon slices here in Iowa. So I think we were able to answer the majority of the questions. If I didn't ask them personally, it's because I know that you had answered them throughout your presentation today, George. So I think we did a
Well,
good job of making sure everything got answered today. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up this morning's farm chat. And once again, thank you all for joining us, and a special thank you to George for taking the time to lead us on this farm chat and show us what it's like to grow watermelon in Florida. So thank you so much, George, and to all the students. Hope you had fun too and learned a little bit more about growing and harvesting watermelon. And have a great rest of your day.
all right, thank you, and goodbye from sunny Florida, and we'll join you this afternoon showing you how they're actually processed at the packing house this afternoon.
Yes, if you're able to join us for part 2, I think some are going to do that. But this afternoon, we're going to be showing you how the watermelon are going to be packed and cleaned and weighed and ready to be sent out. So they're all saying goodbye to you.
All right, goodbye. All right, enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.